Kate here. Today we're talking with Emily Blain, a money coach who helps engaged couples create their own financial goals and dreams. She goes beyond just the mere budgeting to ensure that they're talking about money in a way that's very aligned. They're very transparent in a lot of communication. In this interview, we're going to discuss how to convert her successful coaching, her one-on-one coaching, into an effective do-it-on-your-own course that allows for busy couples to do it in a time that's convenient for them. Tell us a little bit about this program that you want to create.
So I do financial coaching for engaged couples primarily. I work with couples who are not engaged, couples who are married, but primarily what I focus on is engaged couples. So that's what I would build a course around. Obviously, with money, there's a lot of stuff that goes into it. So I do help with creating a budget or a spending plan that works for both people in the relationship, because oftentimes there will be one person who is already gung-ho about budgeting. It's like, yeah, let's do this. We've got this. And the other person is like, budget, yuck. So trying to figure out a way that works for both of them, but then also talking about, okay, so you're really gung-ho, you're not so gung-ho. Let's discuss that. What did you see growing up? How did your parents handle money? Were they successful? Did they fight all the time? How can we prevent you from fighting all the time? What are you two actually trying to accomplish in your lives? And how can we set you up for financial success in that?
That sounds like quite an interesting, fun type of, I won't even say counseling, but it feels like it's pre-counseling.
Yeah, sometimes it pushes up against that border. And at that point, that's when I go, okay, this is getting beyond what I do. Let's find somebody for you to go talk to and dig into a little bit more of this.
So why is this topic so important for you?
Well, part of it is my parents were marriage mentors in their church growing up, which was our church's form of premarital counseling. So it was a couple who'd been married for a long time working through this curriculum with newly engaged couples. And every couple they worked with without fail at dinner sometime, my dad would come home and be like, oh, we talked about money, but one session just isn't enough. And so I sort of just had that ingrained in me that, you have to talk about money when you're in a relationship and one session isn't enough. And then as I got into financial coaching, that was sort of sitting in the back of my mind. And you see those statistics pop up of how many divorces happen because of money. And finances is one of the top leading causes of arguments in couples. I'm like, well, that just sucks. Like, that's not a fun place to be. Like, you never want to argue with your spouse about anything, or with your fiance or with your partner about anything. But so much of people's stress around money comes from not knowing. And even if you want to learn more, because most schools don't teach personal finance, or if they do, it's like a week. Most colleges don't offer courses on personal finance. Most parents don't talk to their kids about personal finance, whether they feel comfortable with it or not, whether they're doing a good job or not. It's not typically a topic that comes up very clearly, very explicitly. Sometimes you teach them things without realizing you're teaching them things, and that could be good or that could be bad. But most of us don't learn about that. And there's obviously so much information out there, which is amazing, but there's also so much information out there that it can be really hard to wade through and figure out, what of this applies to my situation? What of this is good advice? What of this is bad advice? This sounds really good. This person did that, but if I do that, will I get to the same place, or am I going to end up over here? And if I do get to the same place, is that even where I want to be? I don't even know. So trying to help them figure that out and sort of dig into all of that back stuff was something that really interested me, to help those couples start off on a better footing than they would have before.
Yeah. And that really does make sense. It's like money is such an important thing that we don't talk about. And then you start this new relationship with all these hopes in the world, and money kind of needs to finance a lot of those dreams you have. And so, yeah, you kind of need to talk about it.
Yeah. And it's hard to talk about sometimes.
It is hard to talk about. And a lot of people grow up thinking that talking about money is unnecessary, or maybe even bad. You're like, yeah, talk about money because that's a bad thing to talk about.
And whether that's a conscious decision that, oh yeah, we don't want to talk about money, or whether that's subconscious because maybe your parents, literally every time money got brought up, they were fighting. Well, that's a pretty easy way to internalize, oh, talking about money is bad because we're going to fight about it. But you have to talk about money But if you believe that when you talk about money, you fight about it, then every time you talk about it, you're going to fight about it. And then it's just that vicious circle of self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, it just seems like let's nip this whole thing in the bud so we can have a great life together, right?
Exactly. And it's not usually quite that simple, but ideally it's that simple and you have to start somewhere.
Go ahead and read that first letter. This letter is from your ideal client who wants to get into your program, and they're going to explain to you why they want to get in your program.
Dear Emily, we are looking forward to your premarital financial coaching course. Neither of our sets of parents handled money very well, so we're hoping to start our marriage out on healthier footing. We're especially excited about learning how to communicate better about money. Some of our friends got divorced because one of them was hiding money from the other, and we never want to be in that situation. We really want to make this relationship last for the rest of our lives, so talking through our goals and dreams together just makes sense. We've done a lot of that already, but we haven't really talked about the financial aspects of my future career and education goals and where we want to live. All that to say, we're really excited about this. Thank you so much for offering it.
So they've gone through your course, and you're going to read the letter that they would send you at the end.
Dear Emily, wow, we had no idea how in-depth your course would be. We thought we had talked through our goals, but didn't realize how much deeper we could go. Thanks to you, we really feel like we have a plan for our future goals, but also permission to change those plans if we decide they're no longer right for us. We've tried budgeting before, but it's always seemed restrictive and like it's shaming us for spending money. But the spending plan we made together through your course helps us make sure all our expenses are covered while still saving for our goals. Hello, Greece next year, and building in our fun money. Obviously, we haven't used it very long, but for the first time, the spending plan seems like something that will actually be sustainable in our lives. It really seems like we'll be able to achieve our goals together. Thank you so much.
What I heard is they have this fear that hiding money and a lack of transparency could potentially cause divorce, and they want to avoid that. And at the end, they feel like this very solid foundation and skills, so that they had the words that stuck out to me are like permission. Let's say that you are bringing them in and initially they come in and they're maybe tentative to talk about money. What is it that you see in the middle of your course or program or coaching that makes you go, aha, they got it?
I think the aha moment is that first conversation they have about money where they don't fight, where they're like, oh, we just talked about that and there was no conflict. Like we both felt good about it. It was a positive conversation.
Do you mind me asking, like, why do you feel like there's conflict with money?
That's a big question. Usually it seems like simply from experiences that people have had previously, whether it's like I've said before, their parents fought about money growing up or a previous relationship they had, just whatever, I'll use the word baggage, whatever previous experiences they've had with money has set expectations in their mind. And typically those expectations don't perfectly line up because no two people are exactly the same. And whatever you're thinking, chances are there's at least a little bit of difference. And those differences often lead to conflict unless you're talking about them and saying, well, yeah, but I want to go spend money because I had an uncle who died when he was 40 and never got to retire. So I want to spend money now because, yeah, we can save, but who says we're going to be able to do anything fun then? And the other person goes, well, yeah, but I saw my parents retire at 60 and then they went on all these cool trips and that's what I want to do. And those are both perfectly valid outlooks. Mm-hmm. So how do we balance those out? And mm-hmm. just identifying, okay, so here's where you're coming from. Here's where you're coming from. How can we find that happy medium?
What do you think is the biggest challenge in getting them from where they start to where they are at the end?
So to be perfectly honest, I've had resistance to creating a course before because I really like the one-on-one aspect, and taking me out of it just feels weird. But I'm recognizing how busy engaged couples are. And so being able to just do it on their own, like maybe that is more appealing to a lot of couples, to not have to show up to something live, etc. So I think my concern, the biggest step is how to have the conversation without having the mediator, without having a neutral third party there mm-hmm. to kind of pull those things out, to go, oh, I just heard you say this. Let's dig into that a little bit more.
Oh, that's really, really curious, because I agree that in the moment you can probably go, oh, that's very interesting. You touched on that. Where did that come from? Mm-hmm. You don't have the ability to do that. So it almost like you have to set them up to initiate their own listening ear for that.
Mm-hmm.
So, what are some of the most common skills that you sometimes have to teach them to hear their own money stories, their own money fears, their expectations or experiences where they're playing in?
This isn't quite a skill, but I'm wondering if some sort of like questionnaire that they fill out talking through, basically just saying, okay, each of you go think about your own money scripts, think about your own history with money. What have your past experiences been like? Just to give that starting point of seeing, here's sort of a baseline. Does this give you insight into yourself? And then does reading your partners give you insight into them?
Yeah, I actually have created these personas before where people take a
Mm.
questionnaire and it gives them a particular persona, which talks about the
Mhm.
negative and the positive aspects of that particular persona. So coming from it by saying, oh, I tend to be, this persona and you tend to be that persona. And let's talk about where those things come from. And maybe it doesn't have to look like our parents. It doesn't have to look like your parents. It can look
Right.
like our story, what's
Right.
our story? So that's really fascinating. The questionnaire that I've done is kind of like a personality quiz, like you might see with
Mhm.
MBTI or something, but is specifically around money beliefs. So that would be kind of an interesting way to start it off
Mhm.
and give them clues about, oh, is this related to the way that you think about money?
Yeah.
I do think that actually the idea of having a do-it-yourself course, number one, it frees you as a creator. But
Mhm.
the other thing that it does is really this is about creating conversation between these two people. So if your course does a really good job of creating conversation between two people, then you can take yourself out of it. You've
Mhm.
created the environment and they're just going to take advantage of it.
Right.
Have you done any testing with this idea of creating a hands-off type of course before?
I have not.
Okay. So let's say you do this questionnaire, you do these personas or something like that. This is maybe the kind of upbringing that you've had. And what this means is that you may interpret your partner's messages in this way to mean like they're in control, they get to make the decisions, or that life is going to be something and you don't have a voice in it, or whatever it is that thing is. So that way they can be mindful of their things as they go through. And then to create some questionnaires, maybe that they go through in that course that lead them through those conversations from that particular perspective.
Mhm.
Maybe parts where they come together and where they reflect on their own. Okay, so if you did that and created this course in that way, then offer it to some couples for a reduced rate. Like, here's what I'm going to do. I have this idea to create a course, something that allows you 24/7. You can do it on your schedule instead of trying to arrange things on my schedule, which is super busy. And then what I'm going to do, if it's a bonus, is I'm going to meet with you in the beginning to explain the whole thing. I'm going to meet with you at the end to clarify any questions. And I'm going to be available on an urgent call. So if you reach a point at which you feel like you can't get on your own, I'm still going to be the safety net for you. And that way you can test your course and see how it works. And at the same time, give them a safety net so they don't feel like they're abandoned.
Mhm. I like that idea. So let's say I do that, it goes well, like, okay, great, I'm going to make this available. Would you suggest still having live meetings at the beginning or end, offering a live meeting? How do you usually go about deciding that aspect?
I think for the testing period, you would offer that as you're testing. Once
Mhm.
you feel very confident, like once you start feeling like their questions are really not related to getting along, maybe their questions are just like, how should we invest our money? Or we want to go to Greece. Do you know a good travel agent? Nobody uses travel agents anymore.
Every once in a while I hear of somebody, but yeah.
Once you feel like the core questions are no longer the ones being asked, I think you could probably feel a sense of confidence of saying, okay, I'm just offering it as a do it yourself type thing. It is number one, probably going to be more affordable to them, more convenient for them. And then you could possibly offer one-on-one sessions at an added rate. Once you feel it's comfortable, once you're feeling like a certain thing. And then of course, like you said, there are certain times where you feel like there's an impasse. And so you would pass them on to professionals. So maybe you also prepare them and say, hey, this is likely to uncover things that are very difficult and very emotional. And there might have been some situations that you've been through that are deeper than just money. So here are some indications that you might need to go to see a different professional.
I like that idea too, to make that clear that this is not going to cover everything. There could easily be things that are not under my purview that I cannot help you with, that I should not help you with, that maybe I'm legally not allowed to help you with.
Yes.
So here's the things to listen for, and here's some people to reach out to.
Yeah. But I think this is a really good idea. I think that anticipating those conversations ahead of time and preparing them and clues about what to listen for, especially you have a very motivated clientele. These are people who want to get married, so they want to work it out. And this is probably the best time to do it, not when they're 3 years in and go like, you know what?
Yeah.
He's not all that good looking after
It's
all.
hard. Yeah.
So I think this is like a really, really good time to do and have these conversations because they're motivated to work it out. They want to be together.
Yeah, exactly. The only question would be, how do you go about fleshing it out even more?
Well, I'm assuming that your course would be based on your coaching, your one-on-one.
Yeah. So just pull from there.
Yeah, I would use it. It's tried and true because you've already used it, right?
Right.
So if you've had a number of clients, I would stick with that method. The only thing that you have to do is consider where you're necessary to intervene and then equip them to intervene on their own. And I do think, like, for instance, if you have, let's say, 6 coaching sessions, and at the end of coaching 3, you talk about a particular topic, you may want to do like, here's how to have a conversation on this particular topic, work them through the questionnaire, and then give them homework on their own so they can reflect on their own about what they heard from their partner, how to like remove any emotional filtering that might have caused them to mishear the intent of their partner's heart. So, so that they can put everything back into a proper perspective. So I would put time together, those questionnaires that you would typically do, and then I would have time apart where they're examining what they heard and how to hear it in the spirit in which it was meant. Because you have a program that works, super simple. Just stick with that program.
Okay, makes sense.
Let me go ahead and share my screen and I'll show you what I got. This is the money mindset thing that I did, and it's basically just 8 personas based on a questionnaire that they do. And I was helping with somebody who has a business in which people sell financial services. But my concern is like people selling financial services when they have their own money hangups, that can be difficult. So it has a self-assessment, and then it has these different extremes, I should say. And then you can see yourself as potentially having one of these characters in here. So here we're just talking about what money mindset is and where it comes from, the origins. And so people aren't beating themselves up for it. This one above this line, it tries to have somebody determine if they tend to be more this or that. So you see each one of these as opposites. I have no idea how much money I have in my bank account, or I know exactly how much money is in my bank account. If they're kind of in the middle, I'm not so much worried, but if they tend to be more extreme on anything, then that can indicate like a bent in the way that they see money mindset. And then this is the score for all of them. So the difference between these 2 extremes, and this is in a particular dimension. So this person keeps himself in a naive state. They don't really know much about money, and they just kind of are willingly staying here. That's probably me. Versus the cynic, this is the person who doesn't trust anybody with their money, so they know exactly everything. This would be my grandfather who grew up with depression. So you understand why he became a cynic, but this would be a particular mindset. And then this would be creative. So this is like people who believe that how money should be used versus a tycoon. This is like your socialist versus your person who's going to make all their money on their own and keep it all for themselves. And then this is the person who worries about money. And then this is the high roller. This is high risk. And this is low risk. I don't take any risks at all. And then this is how you handle your relationships with money. So you've got the saint versus the guardian. And then these all on this side tend to be money phobic. So there's fears around it. And then these tend to be people who like money and maybe rely on it too much. Talking about the 2 extremes, you go into here's what naive might, this is why you might be naive. And here are some old thoughts and new thoughts. So this particular thing can help create something like this can help create conversation around that particular topic. So understanding where you come from and what bucket you fall into. And if you like this sort of thing, I can give this to you and you can do whatever you want with it, adapt it or whatever. If you feel it would be helpful for people to think about those particular categories of people that come into your business. So
sure. There's a woman who's written a bunch of personal finance, financial coaching, kind of both books. And she has a coaching training program that I have not gone through, but she has something kind of similar of take the quiz, figure out which archetype. So I might look into that as well. And maybe,
but I think something combining along those lines would help them prepare kind of like very compassionately. Where do those belief systems come from? And how are they filtering the way that you see, the conversations with money? And like, how can you compassionately stop yourself from things like, well, girls don't need to know anything about money,
Yep, exactly. Because that doesn't help anybody.
No, that doesn't help anybody. I think what you have is a really good idea. And I think this is really like, if I was getting married again, this is the type of thing that I would want to do. Money was a problem. It is one of those things that I was raised not to talk about.
Yep. And unfortunately, not talking about things we don't want to talk about usually comes back to bite us.
All right, Emily.
Perfect.
It's a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care.
Have a good day.
So there you have it. In this episode, we talked a lot about how to take a coaching program that she's done many times with many couples. So it's very, very successful as far as the content is concerned, and preparing it for a course in which couples can do on their own. This is really, really great if you are a course creator or a coach who wants to free up some time. It also allows for greater access to what you have to offer without trying to get onto a busy calendar. We have a lot more interviews coming. Be sure to like and subscribe.